This question is testing for the concepts of parallelism and idiomatic construction. So we know how idioms work, right? There are no rules to them. They are just constructions that are meant to be the way they are. Since the concept of idioms is one of the 7 major concepts that are being tested, it's strongly advised to learn from a set of idioms and remember what those constructions are, because once you know the right idioms, then they become very easy points of attack on any question for that matter. So I will try to show you both the parallelism and the idiomatic attacks. And as I said, since the idiomatic attack is much easier, I'll show you that first. So in this question, a vertical scan at the beginning of the answer choices shows significant differences, and so do the answer choices towards the end. Now, when dealing with idioms, one thing to remember is that GMAT has a way of confusing test takers by spacing their idioms apart. That means they put certain words between the idiomatic constructions just to distort our view. Because what we can see here is that access for and accessibility for is placed together. But what we really need to catch is that this is not the idiomatic construction, because they are saying it's the access for the farmers. But how exactly do you use the verb access in an idiomatic construction? We say he wants access to the lab. So the right idiomatic construction is access to. But what we can see here is that it says it's the access for something, and B says it's the access to something, C says it's the access to something, D says it's the accessibility for, and E again says it's the access for. Access for is totally unidiomatic, so A and E can be knocked off. Access to is right, as we saw in that example, so we can keep B and C. Accessibility for is wrong, because generally we say it's the accessibility of something and not for, so D can also be knocked off. So we're down to just B and C. Now we can see that another point of attack is here, to improve and improvements of. Now I'll recommend all test takers to be very careful when this preposition of is used, because this might read fine and we might understand the meaning in a certain way. But if I say improvements of access, what does it actually mean? So for example, if I said the ring of fire, what meaning does this indicate? Well, the meaning here is that the ring is made up of fire. And what if I said the ruler of the kingdom? This would mean that he's the ruler that belongs to the kingdom. So if you try to apply the usage of this preposition of, we can see that neither of these meanings actually make sense when we say improvements of access. So this is the meaning problem with C, and we can get rid of that, leaving us with the right answer choice, B for Bravo. Now, there is also another point of attack. As I said in the beginning, this question is also testing for parallelism. And we can see that a vertical scan at the beginning of the answer choices reveals the split among cooperating, cooperates, cooperate, and in cooperation. Now we can use this as well, because what we see before the underlined portion is the conjunction and when the conjunction and is used to connect entities in a list, this becomes a trigger for parallelism. And there's an easy way to deal with parallelism in a list. Let's just look at a list. So if I said, please buy bread, eggs, and butter, what we can see here is that this list contains 3 nouns and they are all parallel, because a list must be of similar items and be balanced. But to deal with the list, we just need to understand exactly what is the starting point of the list. So this buy becomes the starting point because the meaning of this sentence is please buy bread, please buy eggs, please buy butter, right? So that's exactly why we can understand that this is a starting point. So in the same way, if we look at this, we have this verb in the present participle form, cooperating. But if you look at the non-underlined portion, there is no verb in the ing form. So that's where parallelism breaks, A goes off. And if you look at E, which is another easy option to eliminate, we can see that there is this preposition in and this noun cooperation, but we see that there is no noun tied to the cooperation in the non-underlined portion. So E goes off as well. Now B says cooperates. If cooperates has to be the verb in the list, then what we can understand is that this cooperates is actually parallel with the verb works. And this might immediately tempt us to eliminate answer choices C and D because we think, okay, it has to be cooperates. But be very careful. This is exactly how GMAT plays with parallelism. They would try to tie different things which could create an impact in the meaning itself. So we just need to actually judge what is supposed to be parallel and how it impacts the meaning. Because if I say cooperate, then we need to understand that the cooperate is actually tied to strengthen. So if the verb is cooperates, then the starting point becomes this. But if the verb is cooperate, then the starting point becomes this, because then it becomes to strengthen and to cooperate. So by parallelism, B, C, D all can work. So we need to look for another point of attack here. So D has a very easy point of attack because we already have an and which is tying these two elements in the list, strengthen and cooperate. But we can see that there is also another and another verb. So this is definitely invalid construction because we cannot put multiple ands in one list itself. This will be just like saying please buy bread and eggs and butter. That is invalid. We can eliminate D for delta. And remember the first meaning difference I talked about between to improve and improvements of. Improvements of will convey the invalid meaning. So C goes off. This leaves us with the right answer choice B. So we can choose either of these ways to attack the question, whatever way proves convenient to you.